15 mysterious ghost towns scattered around the world. Abundant settlements exist all over the world. Mysterious, creepy, always scare us. There are many reasons why a city can become a ghost town: economic recession, war, natural disaster, environmental disaster. As a rule, such places are completely uninhabited, although they are also ghost towns with a very small population. Some are banned, while others have been turned into parks of tourist attractions. 1. Craco, Italy. This area was inhabited by the Greeks around 540 before century, when they moved from the coastal town of Metaponto Island and named the area Montedoro. Over the century, there has been a successful settlement with a university, 4 large places, and a growing population. In 1656, a plague reduced the population by 100 times. Later, Craco gradually faded away, mainly due to poor agricultural conditions. In 1892-1922, most of the population left for North America. Then, in 1963, there was a major landslide. People had to be evacuated. After the 1980 earthquake, the place was completely abandoned. It is now a popular tourist attraction. Several films have also been shot here, including Quantum of Mercy and Passion of Christ. 2. Body, California, USA. In 19th century, a rich gold mine was discovered in this town, and Body grew up to become a thriving city. At the best of time, between 5,000 and 7,000 inhabitants live here and 2,000 buildings were built. In the early 20th century, the city began to decline. Today, Body is a true ghost town of the Wild West, with only 110 buildings left. It is open to the public, and tourists are free to walk through deserted city streets and view the remaining belongings in the shelves of shops and interior spaces. 3. Prypyat, Ukraine. Probably one of the most famous ghost towns in the world. Prypyat was founded in 1970 as the 9th nuclear city in the Soviet Union to support the neighbor Chernobyl nuclear power plant. At the time of the evacuation, the day of the Chernobyl disaster, in the afternoon of April 27, 1986, the city's population was 49,360 people. Naturally, the city was abandoned after the catastrophe and soon became a ghost town. Nowadays, when the radiation levels has decreased, more and more tourists visit the place, and various Ukrainian companies offer excursions around the city. 4. Oradour-sur-Glan, France. Oradour-sur-Glan, an abandoned village in the Nouvelle-Aquitaine area in western central France. It was destroyed in 10 July 1944, when the Nazis killed almost all its inhabitants. 642 people, including women and children, were killed. Of the village's total population, only about 30 miraculously survived that day. Until led by Adolf Dickmann forced all the villagers to leave their homes. The men were gathered in barns where they were shot and then set on fire. Women and children were locked up in the church, which was also set on fire. Those who tried to get out of the burning building were shot. After the war, then French President Charles de Gaulle decided that the village should be turned into a memorial, and a new village with the same name was built nearby. 5. Varosha quarter in the city of Famagusta, Cyprus. Today, Varosha is an abandoned quarter in the south of the Prypyat city in Famagusta. And once, by the early 70s, it was the #1 tourist center in all of Cyprus. These lead the new buildings, mainly hotels and various tourist attractions. It's a peak. Varosha was the #1 tourist center in the world and saw visitors such as Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Barton, and Bridget Bardot. Things changed with the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974 when the area came under Turkish control. The people of Varosha fled and the territory was abandoned and occupied by the Turkish armed force. To this day, the Varosha quarter is uninhabited and entry is prohibited. 6. Garnet, Montana, USA. Garnet is another one of the abandoned mining towers in the United States, built in the 1860s. In 1898, the city was inhabited by about 1,000 people. Not surprisingly, Garnet was abandoned decades later when the gold mines ran out. Although it was severely damaged in a fire in 1912 that destroyed half of the city. Garnet is now one of the best preserved coast towns in Montana. It is visited by 16,000 people every year. 7. Hashima Island, Japan. Hashima, also known as Gankanjima, is an island located about 15 kilometers from Nagasaki in southern Japan. In the early 19th century, coal was discovered on the island, and 80 years later, in 1887, coal mines were built here. The peak population of Hashima was registered in 1959, when 5,259 people lived on the island. In 1974, when the coal reserves came to end, the mines were closed and people left. The island remained abandoned until the early 2000s, when there was interest in its historical ruins. Some buildings have been restored, and since 2009 tourists have been allowed to enter. In 2015, the island was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 8. Kennicott, Alaska, USA. Kennicott was once a central mining camp that connected several coal mines. It all began in 1900 when rich deposits of copper ore with a high concentration up to 70% of pure chalcocite were discovered here. At that time, copper and gas became extremely valuable, thanks to the invention of electricity, cars, and telephones. Hundreds of people therefore came here to work in copper mines 7 days a week. Between 1909 and 1938, the Kennicott mines produced more than 4.6 million tons of ore, with profit exceeding $100 million. By the early 30s, deposits of high-quality ores were depleted and 5 mines closed, one after another. The last train left Kennicott on November 10, 1938, marking the end of the era and leaving behind a ghost town. 9. Kolmanskop, Namibia. In 1908, in the southern part of Namibia, 10 kilometers from the port city of Lodritz, a worker found a diamond and showed it to his boss, the German railway inspector August Stoch. This led to the emergence of a town where German miners came together in great numbers to mine diamonds. They built for themselves a hospital, ballroom, power station, school, bowling alley, theater, gym, casino, ace factory and the first X-ray station in the southern hemisphere. Soon after World War II, diamond deposits began to dry up and people began to leave. The city was finally abandoned in 1956. Now the desert gradually takes its place and tourists who come here run on their knees in the sand. To enter the city, you need a special permit. 10. Dhanushkodi, India. Dhanushkodi was once a simple Indian city full of life and laughter. People could come and go by passenger trains, enjoy the view of Blasket Sea on one side and the Park Strait on the other. However, everything changed when Cyclone Ramswara struck the city on the night of December 22-23, 1964. The wind speed was 280 km per hour, and the high of tidal waves was 7 meters. As a result of the disaster, about 1,800 people died. The city was abandoned by the residents and declared until for life. Today the place is popular among tourists. 11. Elevator, Israel. The settlement dates back to very ancient times. Archaeological remains dating back to the Iron Age were found on this place. In 1949, 2,250 people lived in the elevator, 2,230 of whom were Muslims, and the remaining 20 were Christians. During the Civil War of 1947-48 and the Palestinian Exodus of 1948, elevator was abandoned by the Arab inhabitants. The rest of the Jewish community left in 1971. The last resident left in 2017. And since then, the village of Elevator is considered a nature preserve in Israel. 12. Clomino, Poland. Clomino was a small village known in the early 20th century as Westphalenhill in the former German province of Pomerania. During World War II, the Germans opened a camp for prisoners of war in the area where Polish soldiers, civilian and French army officers were held. In January 1944, Westphalenhill was captured by the advancing Red Army and once again turned into a military base, now Soviet, called Grodek. There were about 6,000 Soviet soldiers living there. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Grodek was renamed Clomino, and the government put it up for sale. Nobody was interested in it, however, and very few decided to move there. At the moment there are 5 inhabitants left in Clomino. Almost all the buildings have been destroyed and looted. 13. Kayakey, Turkey. Situated 8 kilometers south of Fithiya in southwestern Turkey in old province of Lycia. Kayakey is a city full of ruined buildings from the 18th century. Also people lived in the area in ancient times. Before World War I, Kayakey was home at about 6,500 Greeks. Almost none of them remained, as a result of the mass killing of Greek and another Christian minorities in the Ottoman Empire during the war. After the Treaty of Lausanne was signed in 1923. After Greece lost the Greek-Turkish War of 1919-1922, the Greek Orthodox population was forced to leave what is now Turkish territory. Turkish government tried to populate the area with Greek Muslims, but they refused for fear of the ghost of the Greeks killed there. Today, Kayakey is uninhabited and serves as an open-air museum. 14. Pyramid. Svalbard, Norway. The Swedish settlement was founded in 1910, and in 1927 Sweden sold it to the Soviet Union. This is how the Soviet mining village Prypyat appeared on West Spitsbergen Island, where coal was mined for many years. At the peak of development in the pyramid was more than 1,000 inhabitants. A house of culture with theater, library, art and music studios, sports complex and a 24-hour cafe. When coal in the last mine ran out by 1998, the village was abandoned and mothballed. Today the pyramid is a tourist destination. The museum and hotel are opened all year round. 15. Great Blasket Island. The Irish island of 4.29 square kilometers was inhabited until 1943, but the Irish government then decided that it could not guarantee the safety of the inhabitants because the island was difficult to access in extreme weather conditions. Residents had been evacuated and relocated to other locations. Today the island is uninhabited only by rains that remind us of the past. Post-Colo in Great Blasket was home to several Irish writers such as the Thomas Cromhain, Peg Sayers, and Maurice Sullivan, and is still a place of cultural value to Irish people as well as literature lovers.